Hello, in today's video I'll be talking about 3 books that got me out of a reading slump. These are my most recent reads and I greatly enjoyed each one. So let's get started with the one that I finished only yesterday, and it's The Post Office Girl by Stefan Zweig. This is my first time reading a book by him, but it most definitely will not be the last. The other book that I want to read of his is Beware of Pity, so I'll probably talk about that book sometime in the future. But The Post Office Girl basically explores this girl who works at a post office. The time period in which it takes place is in Austria following the First World War. Basically, the book is an exploration of poverty and the effect that it has on people and their mindsets and the ways in which they go through life. It's a heartbreaking book. At several points in the book, I felt genuine anger and sadness. Essentially, the main character in the story gets an opportunity to experience life without poverty. And for the first time, she's able to do a lot of the things that she couldn't do before, a freedom that she didn't even know she lacked. And so she's exposed to this entirely new world, and it's kind of ripped away from her. And you see how her mindset shifts as she realizes the unfairness of the world, and obviously she reacts with rage and anger. Something had happened to her. She knew it herself. It was as though someone had sprinkled some venom into her eyes while she slept, so that now she saw the world in its light. Everything was ugly, malignant, and hostile when viewed with malignant and hostile eyes. She began every day in a rage. The story itself is beautifully written. I really liked the writing. I was completely immersed in the book. So when I first picked it up, the first thing that I realized was there was no chapters. The book is split into 2 parts. And I'm the type of person that likes chapters. In this book, I didn't have that, and I felt like, oh, maybe I would get bored, maybe it would be difficult for me to get into it because there's no end, basically. Surprisingly, that had no effect on my enjoyment level for this book. If anything, I feel like because it wasn't broken up into several small parts, I was fully into the story. Like, I lost complete track of time. It was just so easy to get lost in this book. There's an inherent limit to the stress that any material can bear. Water has its boiling point. Metals their boiling points. The elements of the spirit behave the same way. Happiness can reach a pitch so great that any further happiness can't be felt. Pain, despair, humiliation, disgust, and fear are no different. Once the vessel is full, the world can't add to it. Thus, the telegram causes Christine no new distress. Her intelligence grasps clearly that she ought to feel shock, alarm, anxiety, but however alert she is, the emotions don't function. The next book that I'll be talking about is Heaven by Miyako Kawakami. And the main character in this book is a 14-year-old boy who is getting severely bullied. It's a coming-of-age story. You basically see him tackle with ideas of how the world works and what it means to be a part of society. The book also tackles the idea of meaning in the world, whether or not the things that you do are meaningful or meaningless, the significance that you give to certain events in your life, how that could sustain you. It tackled the issue of bullying in a very nuanced way. The story itself was also very heartbreaking, but the discussions it gave about life were honestly so profound. A quote that I really liked is, "Listen, if there is a hell, we're in it. And if there's a heaven, we're already there. This is it." It really isn't a lighthearted read by any means, but it was a book worth reading for me personally. The last book that I'll be talking about is by the same author, All the Lovers in the Night by Miyako Kawakami. Surprisingly, when I first read this book, it took me a bit to get into it. I thought that I would be blown away by it because I really liked Heaven. And so I went in with kind of high expectations, but at the same time, it was off to such a slow start. And so I just had the impression that Heaven would be the better book in the end for me, but it turned out that I liked All the Lovers in the Night so much more. Basically, you follow this main character who's very boring. There's nothing that interesting about her. She's a proofreader and she spends most of her days locked up in her apartment. The relationships that she has are just so interesting, and you see how she interacts with certain peoples and the problems that she's dealing with. And her life is so mundane. All human beings are very complex, and our problems are very complex. And I feel like that book perfectly depicted the problems that people face going through life. Even though life can be so mundane, the things that we encounter and the thoughts that we go through are pretty complicated. The parts in particular that I really liked was her relationship with one of her colleagues. I liked seeing their interactions and their conversations, and also the depiction of her developing feelings for someone. It was almost cute. It was pretty adorable at certain points, but also frustrating and exciting. I was so scared of being hurt that I'd done nothing. I was so scared of failing, of being hurt, that I chose nothing. I did nothing.